two things I'd like to say before I read. One, generally about whistleblowing. In 33 years, under both Republicans and Democrats, I've found the problem the same, whatever bureaucracy you're talking about. Whistleblowers are about as welcome in a bureaucracy as skunks at a picnic. There's a great deal of peer pressure to go along to get along. And then specifically in regard to the FDA, just so everybody knows, we have a Democrat president, but going back to 2003, when I first got involved with whether or not the scientific process was being respected within the FDA, and respected scientists coming forward, first was Vioxx, and then several things since then, we have found problems with the respect of scientists and the respect of the scientific process within that agency, regardless of who was president. Thank you, Chairman Issa, for calling this important hearing and for the great work that you and your staff have done. Together, we have conducted a detailed investigation into the FDA aggressive surveillance of whistleblowers. A group of FDA scientists expressed concern about the safety of certain devices under review by the agency. They expressed their concern to the President's transition team and to Congress. They also contacted the Office of Special Counsel, which is an agency, as you know, created by Congress to receive whistleblower complaints and protect whistleblowers from retaliation. The FDA knew that contacts between whistleblowers and the Office of Special Counsel are confidential and protected by law. However, the FDA was intently spying on whistleblowers. There was no effort to avoid snooping on legally protected communications. This surveillance was much more intense than routinely monitoring of government employees on government computers. It was far more invasive than what would be necessary to detect inappropriate use of computer systems. The agency captured a picture of whatever was on the screen every 5 seconds, as you've said, and recorded every keystroke typed. Again, the FDA did not monitor every FDA employee this aggressively, just the whistleblowers. When we first spoke to the FDA in January 2012, they tried to dodge the issue. When I started asking questions, FDA officials seemed to suffer from a sudden case of collective amnesia. It took the FDA more than 6 months to answer my letter asking about its surveillance of its own employees. When I finally received response, it didn't even answer the simplest of questions, such as who authorized the targeted operation. Worse than that, it was misleading in its denials about intentionally intercepting communications with Congress. When I asked them why they couldn't just answer some simple questions, they told my staff that the response was under review by, quote, the appropriate authorities in the administration. The FDA's non-answers and doublespeak would have fit right into some George Orwell novel. The work our staffs have done together uncovered answers to many of those initial questions. Today, we will hear from some of the FDA employees involved in the surveillance. There can be legitimate reasons to monitor the use of government computers by government employees. However, as our joint report shows, FDA officials gave little, if any, thought to the legal limits that might restrict their power to monitor their employees. No one at the FDA made any attempt to limit the collection of legally protected communications with attorneys, with the Office of Special Counsel, or with Congress. The FDA trampled on the privacy of its employees and their right to make legally protected disclosures of waste, fraud, and abuse. These whistleblowers thought the FDA was caving to pressure from the companies that were applying for FDA approval. I don't know whether they were right, but they have a legal right to express those concerns. After expressing their safety concerns, 2 whistleblowers were fired. 2 more were forced to leave FDA, and 5 of them were subjected to an intense spying campaign. At the beginning of the FDA Commissioner Hamburg's term, she said that whistleblowers expose critical issues within the FDA. She vowed to create a culture that values whistleblowers. By the way, that's a promise I've had from several people, predecessor to her, coming to my office wanting confirmation and making those same promises. In fact, in 2009, Commissioner Hamburgs said, and I quote, "I think whistleblowers serve an important role," end of quote. I wanted to believe Commissioner Hamburg when she testified before the Senate during her confirmation. I wanted to believe her when she said she would protect whistleblowers at the FDA. However, in this case, the FDA was certainly not a whistleblower-friendly place to work. And I've spoke about how that's been the case since, at least my involvement, since 2003. The FDA managers believed that the whistleblowers were leaking confidential information improperly. But the managers who claimed that there were many other problems with the job performance of the targeted employees. Performance issues, of course, should be handled by directly supervising and managing employees. Instead, the FDA asked the HHS Office of Inspector General to investigate whether the employers had violated the law. The Inspector General declined on multiple occasions, but FDA managers kept asking for a criminal inquiry. Rather than simply managing its employees, the FDA then started spying on them. The managers kept looking for information that would convince the Inspector General to seek criminal prosecution. It was sort of management by investigation. And of course, that's no way to run an agency. According to the OIG and later the Department of Justice, the FDA had no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing by the whistleblowers. None whatsoever was ever found. The FDA spent months using intrusive real-time surveillance of their employees' computers, looking for evidence of a crime. That time and effort would have been better spent supervising and managing the employees directly and making sure the employees were doing their job and not bothered from doing their job. The FDA claimed that their employees had no expectation of privacy on their FDA computers. However, when interviewed by congressional investigators, none of the FDA officials were willing to accept full responsibility for authorizing the surveillance. Apparently, no one was properly supervising this invasive surveillance program. The monitoring software used was so comprehensive, it took countless hours just to review all the material. It was a detailed record of everything each of the scientists did all day, every day, for months. Hundreds of thousands of screen images had to be reviewed by FDA contractors, all at taxpayers' expense. So what kind of legal guidance was provided to these contractors about what they could capture? None. We would not have known the full extent of the spying today if the FDA had not accidentally released 80,000 pages of fruits of its spying on the Internet. Talk about adding insult to injury. After collecting all of this information in an effort to supposedly prevent leaks, the same agency ends up posting all of those documents online for the world to see. In these internal documents that FDA never wanted the public to see, it referred to the whistleblowers as collaborators. So you understand what I mean when I say whistleblowers are about as welcome in an agency as a skunk at a picnic. FDA referred to our staffers as ancillary actors, and they happen to refer to newspaper reporters as immediate outlight actors. Let me tell you, you wouldn't be doing any congressional investigation. Well, you might do a little bit because we could obviously ferret out some, but we wouldn't be doing 90% of what we do on protecting whistleblowers and congressional oversight if it wasn't an enterprising newspaper or media people or whistleblowers coming forth with some things that they find wrong that we don't even know where the skeletons are buried in the bureaucracy of this big government of ours. But anyway, so they're collaborators, they're ancillary actors, or they're media outlet actors. The FDA claimed it was a mistake made by the company it hired to convert surveillance records for legal review. And of course, that wasn't true. The FDA incorrectly filled out a purchase order for the work. The FDA did not mark the documents as confidential or sensitive, and it didn't even fill out the form until after the work had been done. Our inquiry uncovered no record that the private contractors was told that the documents were sensitive. So, the FDA failed to classify these documents as sensitive and then tried to blame the small business company that it hired to convert the documents. This is a scene that comes up time and time again in this entire story that you're looking into today. The FDA has failed to accept responsibility for its actions or impose accountability. This is from an agency that purportedly wants to foster a culture where whistleblowers are valued, based upon Director Hamburg's testimony to our committee. The FDA's actions are, of course, disappointing. Not just disappointing because of the history that we're now, of this history, but over a long period of time, and it was supposed to change when this commissioner was appointed. But it would be even worse if that agency fails to learn from its mistakes. And since 2003, and maybe people before me would say the same thing, would say that they've been looking for learning from the mistakes of the past. Doesn't seem to happen. And most of these are just simple respect for the scientific process, because you can leave, if you leave the politics out of it and let scientists do it, the scientific process of one science checking on another scientist's work will prove itself, or that scientist isn't going to be worth anything. These policies need to ensure that any monitoring is limited to achieving only the legitimate purpose. Watching on employees every minute leads to a culture of intimidation and fear, which not just the FDA, but bureaucracies generally want whistleblowers to know about, so that they don't tell what they know is wrong. And of course, that's no way to encourage whistleblowers, or it's no way to show that you value their concerns. I thank you very much.